Hello everyone, in this video we are going to make sense of CSS variables and how they work inside Builderius. A lot of beginners aren't sure where variables actually go in code or why they go there. So today we are going to start by creating one variable, inspect it, and understand what's really happening behind the scenes. Let's add a little bit of HTML. Select our div, hold shift, heading, text. Right. So let's start by adding a variable in Builderius. Let's go to the CSS vars tab. We are going to click new variable. We are going to select custom. And I'll create a variable called color brand. And I'll give it a value of blue. Let's save it. We have a group called color and our color. So let's save, and we want to inspect it in the front end. If I switch to my style editor, come down to global CSS, I'm going to see my variable I just created. So now, this is where it gets interesting. What exactly is root and why does our variable go there? In CSS, root is a special pseudo class selector that targets the highest level element in your document. In HTML, that's the HTML tag. Think of it like the root of a tree. Everything in your web page branches out from it. When we define CSS variables, also called custom properties, inside roots, we are saying these variables should be globally available across the entire style sheet. And by the way, root isn't limited to HTML. It always targets the topmost element in the document. So in SVG, that would be the SVG tag. And in XML documents, it might be config, data, or whatever the first tag is. So just remember, root means the root of the document, whatever document type happens to be. Now you might be wondering, why not just use the HTML selector instead of root? After all, they both point to the same element, right? That's true, but here's the catch. Root has higher specificity than HTML. This means if the same CSS variable is defined in both places, the value from root will take precedence even if it appears earlier in the code. This helps avoid conflicts. If someone later defines a variable on HTML, your root value will still win. That's why root is now the standard way to define global CSS variables, not just in Builderius, but in all modern CSS architecture. So let's jump into a quick CodePen demo so you can see exactly how this works. Here I'm defining the same variable twice using the HTML selector. Since the green one comes later, it's going to override the blue one. So let me add brand here. Right. So like I said, since the green one comes later, it overrides the blue one. This is the cascade in action. The browser reads styles from top to bottom and the last one wins. Now let's change the first HTML to root. If we take this one out, now the value of color brand is blue. Even though the root definition comes earlier, that's because root has higher specificity than HTML, so it beats the cascade order. This might seem a bit unexpected, but it's exactly why we use root to define global variables. But what if the selectors are both root? So let's say this one also becomes roots. Now both have equal specificity, so the cascade takes over again. Just like before, the last one wins, so the value is green. Whether it's HTML versus HTML or root versus root, if specificity is the same, cascade decides which style wins. And by the way, you can hover over selectors in DevTools to quickly see their specificity, or use a tool like the specificity.kigan.st website. It's surely helpful when you are trying to figure out why one style wins over another by getting the specificity details. Now let's go back to Builderius. Selectors. Let me select the root selector. Now, you would notice that every selector has a CSS variable section except for roots. If you check under advanced, there is no CSS variable. If I was to switch to say H1, under advanced we have CSS variables, but the root is the only one that doesn't have. And that's because this new variable section button at the top is actually editing the root selector behind the scenes. So it's a shortcut, so you don't need to manually select root and go to the tab, just like you have for other selectors. You don't have to do this, then come here. All you have to do is while you're in the root, you just click here. Now, I want to highlight some common friction points and quirks with variables in Builderius. So let me go through my lists. Where's my list? Let me get my list. Okay. So the first one says unnecessary click during variable creation. So when you are creating a variable, you are going to click new variable, then it's going to ask you custom color or clamp. You click custom again, and it gives you this particular context. But why? Shouldn't everything just default to custom, especially for the free version? And I don't see anything special about the color variables you have, the color option you have here, and even clamp, because if we come down here, our color is already available. We can pick colors here, even with gradients. Very nice. So I really don't see why we have to click twice to create a new variable, especially in free. If I click new variable, the form should just open to allow me make variables, because the extra click serves no purpose in my opinion and just slows you down, especially for this free version. Now the next one is hidden shortcuts. Do you know that you can actually create a variable without clicking the new variable button? If I was to come here where you have search for variables, if I was to just type my variable directly in this search field, there will be no need to do all that extra stuff. I can just write my variable here, put enter, and we're done. Let me even show you an example. So let's say I want to create color accent. I type it, I just press enter, tab, this could be green, enter again, and there you have it. I have another variable created. So it's a cool trick, right? But so you see the problem. The UI gives you zero hint that this shortcut exists. The placeholder text doesn't help, so it's easy to miss entirely. I mean, there should be, I don't know, maybe apart from search for variables, there should be a context that lets people know that you can fill in your variables and create one. Now the next one is, I think it's what I just did when I was creating a variable, which is manually saving. When you are creating a variable here, okay, let's say I just created this, you'd have to press enter, or you click the save button, or the variable is not saved, which is not the same way. If you look at other selectors, if I switch new CSS variable, if you just put your name and your value, it automatically creates the variable. So this lack of consistency sometimes can be problematic. I have actually forgotten to save multiple times while testing. I create variables and I forget to save. And when I go and save, the variable doesn't show up. Excuse me. Now the next one says no contextual variable creation. Aha. So let me come down here. If I enter my color, now because I'm in color, you would think that I should be able to create another variable here without coming up here to click new variable or come here. Because I'm in the color grouping context, I want to be able to just create another variable inside here. What is the point of it being open like this? There should be like maybe a button. I can just click and continue, similar to what you have here. Yes, new CSS variable plus. So probably that's what we should have when you're in context, maybe down here. So if I click it, probably I could create another one. And the next one is very similar to this same one and has to do with duplication. I want to be able to duplicate a variable, because if you are trying to set up a series of similar variables, it becomes very painful if you have to always go back and start again. I don't know. That's just my opinion. And number 6 here says, it says can't just select an existing variable. Okay. So for this one, there's no drop down of existing variables to pick from. Instead, you are stuck typing or copy and pasting every time, which is slow and error prone, especially in large projects. So for example, let me create a variable called, let's do color background. Let's do color background brand. So I want this variable to be connected to my color brand. I would expect if I click here, I should be able to get access to the previously created variables. But so you see now I have to manually type var, then color brand. Did I put, oh no, color, sorry. Color. So you see, there was no way for me to highlight my variables that I'd created previously. So this is really not really good for UX. And the next one is the box. I think that's number 7. This particular box. If I had a very long variable, it will be very difficult to see the full variable. I think we're going to look at this when we talk about grouping in Builderius, which is going to be the next thing I want to talk about, how this grouping works. Grouping variables is where things start to feel really inconsistent and it's kind of weird. So let me show you 3 examples to highlight the issue. Let's start with creating a neutral color. So let's say maybe I have AD design system and I want to call it, make a color neutral, maybe 000 since it's white. Let's give this a value of white. Enter. Now see what the problem is. My group is now ADDS. You'd expect this to end up in a group like maybe color neutral or color neutral, but no, it gets grouped under ADDS just because that's the first word you have here. Now, if probably maybe I wanted all my variables under this design system ADDS, maybe I have ADDS color neutral, ADDS typography, and what have you, then this would be a good system, a good way to organize all my variables under ADDS. But this is not the expected outcome. Now, for the second one, this is going to be a little bit tricky. Let's create a variable called maybe colors. Let's call it color 1 secondary. And this is going to be color 1 secondary. Let's give it a value of purple. So where do you think this is going to end up? We have color, and here we have color 1 dash. So I'm guessing color 1 would be the new category instead of color. So let's see. It goes under color, but my variable starts with color 1. So as long as excuse me, as long as they are not alphabets. If it was 1 underscore double dash, whatever it is, if they are not alphabets, Builderius is going to cancel or forget about it, then put it under the grouping that has no number or whatever stuff you're using that is not an alphabet. The bottom line is, I was expecting this at least to be color 1, a group called color 1, but it's still under color. So it's not, things are not consistent. And the last one is going to shock you. So let's create another variable. Let's call it 1 color. The same secondary. And let's call it purple. So where do you think this is going to end up? Do you think it's going to end up on that color? Now, if you've said that, then good job. You failed. Ideally, you think because this one is going to be removed from Builderius, the category is going to just be color, like we had here. It jumped the one and used color. So here you think it will jump the one and use color, but let's see what happens. Undefined. So that's why I said things are grouping is a little bit weird when it comes to Builderius. Let's look at what we have on the front end or in our code. Global CSS. Ideally, all these variables, color, ADDS color, color 1 color, all these are color variables. And if these were actual variables I created, I want them to all be under the same grouping category. So there should be default groups like you have in Figma tokens or Oxygen 6. Or better yet, the grouping should be completely decoupled from the variable name. At the very least, make it optional. Another thing I think I would like would be scoping. So when assigning variables to elements, I don't want to see everything. I don't see all these elements, especially these tier 1 variables that are only used as aliases. There should be a way to filter or scope what's shown, so you're only seeing the variables that matter for that specific context. So let me see. Let me show an example. Let me pick a selector, H1. So let's say we go to background, and I want to add background here. So all these color brand, color accent, ADDS neutral, color 1, all these are tier 1 variables. I don't want to see them. The only one I would want probably would be the tier 2, which is color background brand. So it would be nice to be able to scope them in a way. Then let me see, is there any other thing I want to talk about? Let me check my notes. CSS limitations. Okay. Now this is a little bad. Now, when it comes to writing code, let me open a root. Usually, I like to separate my tier 1 from tier 2. So let me get this out of the way. This is what I like to do. I like to have my tier 1s and my tier 2s. Or shall I say variables I'm going to use as aliases here, then the ones I'm going to use in the UI. Sometimes I use tier 1s in UI, so they are also going to end up here. Now, Builderius doesn't allow for multiple creation of root declarations. And this limitation was significant enough that I had to delay this video just to test in Builderius Pro mode to see what's going to happen. And it also breaks your code in Pro. So if we come back here, if I come to selectors, if I try to create root again, root, it does not work. And this is a very normal way to write CSS in Builderius. So let me switch to Pro and show you guys what I mean. So we're in Pro. These are my tier 1 variables and these are my tier 2 variables. So if I come here, let's add brand here. This is going to be color brand, and let's add accent here. And this is going to be accent. So we have tier 1 variables and tier 2 variables. We have multiple roots. Now, like we saw in the free version, you cannot create multiple roots. Let's save. Let's look here. So in our code, we have our roots and we have our roots, which is what I expect. This is how I work in VS Code. But when I come back and I reset, since I've saved, let me refresh the page, see what's going to happen. If we come back to our selectors, roots, let's come to CSS. So you see what happens. My tier 1 variables are gone. So if I was to copy my style sheet that had multiple roots and I brought it into Builderius from a previous project, my code will be completely destroyed. And I don't think this is, or should I say, I think this is a very serious problem that the Builderius team needs to look at, having multiple selectors, because this is a very simple, this is the way people code when it comes to CSS. Now the good news is I found a workaround, and probably in the next video, that's what we're going to look at. The workaround is to create 2 roots, and it also allows me to pick the variables that are going to show in the UI. So to recap, I think we created a CSS variable. We defined what root was. We showed how it differs from HTML, even though they both target the HTML. We did a specificity demo. We learned that root adjusts based on document types. We highlighted a few quirks, and I think that'll be all. So thanks for watching, and if this helped you understand how variables work in Builderius and in CSS more broadly, give the video a like and subscribe. So in the next video, we're going to solve this issue with my workaround. Thank you very much.